Hi guys. Okay, if you're watching this, I'm hoping that you are ready to review for the Chapter 7 test on decimals, which is going to be at this point Friday. Sorry, that's my dog just whining. I'm going to give you a couple problems as a review. My suggestion would be to maybe like solve them on your own and then check with the answers as you keep listening to the video. As a reminder, a decimal is a part of a whole. It is a piece of something, kind of similar to how a fraction is. We've talked a lot about how the difference between a fraction and a decimal is that when place value, a fraction can be cut into anything that you want. It can be cut into fifths, it can be cut into ninths, it can be cut into, millions. It doesn't matter. You can cut a decimal or a fraction anyway. Whereas a decimal, we've talked about how it goes with our place value system, so it's base 10, and that there are different, you can only cut it into tens, hundreds, or thousands, and so on. So if we have our place value, I know that this is my ones, this is my tenths, and these would be my hundredths. I'm trying to write with my finger, and this is really hard to do. So now I know how you guys feel when you are trying to write. Okay, so if I am filling out my place value, this is kind of where we are focusing in 4th grade, and we talked about how in 5th grade we're going to add another place value and work with the thousands. We've done a lot of things. We've done working with tenths, we've worked with hundredths, we've done fractions to a decimal, we've done rounding, and we've done comparing. So we're going to review a couple problems to hopefully help you better understand or feel more confident going into the test. So if I need to erase this. What a pain. Can I do... Okay, got a new page. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a problem, and I want you guys to see if you can solve it. So if I wrote this decimal, I would like you to write that as a fraction. And if I were going to do that, I'm hoping that you're realizing that if I have 62 hundredths, I have 62 hundredths, okay? You could also write it as I have 6 tenths, and I also have 2 hundredths. Regardless, these would be the same. They would all equal 62 hundredths, okay? Let's do another problem. I'm going to write a number, and I want you to tell me, I'm going to write a couple numbers, and I want you to tell me which number has a 7 in the tenths place. Which one has a 7 in the tenths place? I'm hoping that you're realizing it's this number because there's the 7. Which one has a 7 in the hundredths place? I'm hoping that you are realizing that it is this last one because the 7 right there is in the hundredths place, okay? As a reminder, this is in the tens place, and this 7 would be in the ones place. What if I I wrote this number, and I wanted to know the value of the digit 8? Like, what is the value? And when I think of the word value, it makes me think of, like, how much is it worth? Almost like the amount of money it's worth. So if I'm looking at the value of the 8... I'm hoping that there's 2 ways to write it. You could write it as it's worth 8 hundredths. Or you could write that it is worth 8 hundredths. Or honestly, you could even write that it is worth 8 hundredths. Okay? All of those show how much it's worth. If you write 8, that would be incorrect because it's not worth 8. That would be 8 ones, and that's not correct. Okay, what if a fraction, and I would like you to write it as a decimal. So if you were going to write this as a decimal, what would this look like? So please solve that on your own and then check when you're ready. If I were going to solve it, I am reminding myself that if I have 4 and 1/25th, I can't have a 25th with a decimal. I could only have tenths or hundredths. I want to change my 25th to be tenths or hundredths. I can't change it into a tenth because I can't make 25 into 10. There's nothing I could divide 25 by that would get me 10, so I'm going to make it 100. I know that 25 times 4 gets me to 100, and so I know that 1 times 4 is 4. So a lot of kids are like, oh, the answer is 4 100ths, but as a reminder, you can't forget about this whole number. So I would have 4 and 4 hundredths, okay? Let's check another one. I'm going to give you a fraction or a decimal, and I want you to figure out a way to write this in simplest form. If I have this number, how could you write this as a fraction in simplest form? Keyword there being simplest. And also, I would suggest reading it reading the number out loud and then solving. So if you have to pause it, go for it. I would solve this. This is 200, so I would write 2 hundredths. And if I'm looking at this, I know that 2 and 100 share a common factor of 2. So I know that I can divide both by 2, and I would get 1/50th as my final answer. If you put 2 100ths as your answer, you are correct, except that you did not put it in simplest form, so you would end up losing points for that one. Let's write this number in decimal form. 275 hundredths. Write that as a decimal. Sometimes I find it's easier to go from a fraction first because we have so much background knowledge in fractions and doing 275 hundredths and then kind of realizing like, oh wait, that's improper, so I need to pull out how many hundreds. Well, if I have 200, I can pull out 2 groups of 100 and I have 75 left over, and then it would be easier for you to write your answer as 2 and 75 hundredths. Okay, let's do this number. I want you to write this as a decimal. So what would 16/5 be as a decimal? Pause it, and then when you're ready to check. I'm hoping that you realize that, once again, fractions I have to make, in order to make it a decimal, I have to change it to be tenths or hundredths because our place value is working in tenths or hundredths, and our base 10 doesn't work with fifths. So my strategy, and there's 2 ways to do this. Some people choose to just take this fraction, make it into tenths or hundredths, and then make it into a decimal. This isn't proper, so I'm going to make it into a mixed number first because I find that it's easier to work with mixed numbers. So if I have 16/5, I know that I'm pulling out how many groups of 5/5 I can pull out if I have 16/5, and I know that I can pull out 3 wholes because that's 5/5 3 times, and that would be 15/5, and I know that I have 1/5 left over, so I would get 3 1/5. Now I can make that as a decimal. So if I have 3 1/5, I could make my decimal into tenths or hundredths. In this scenario, I'm going to pick tenths because I think it's easier to go from fifths to tenths, and I would get 2 tenths. So don't forget about this 3. My final answer would be I have 3 wholes and 2 tenths, or you could write 3 wholes and 20 hundredths. Both of those answers would be acceptable. All right, I'm going to give you a couple numbers. This is going to be our last problem of the review, and I want you to put them in order from greatest to least, okay? So I definitely want you to pause this and try this. So if I gave you these numbers, I'm just going to write them up and down. 8 tenths, 5 hundredths, 2 tenths, and let's do 45 hundredths. This whiteboard does not give you a ton of room. I'm going to add one more up here, and 1/4. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers that you need to write in order from greatest to least. But the thing that I want you to do first is to make it more challenging, I want you to make all of them into decimals and then order them from greatest to least. So you're going to pause the video, make all of these 1/4, 8 tenths, 5 hundredths, 2 tenths, 45 hundredths into decimals, and then order them. When you're ready, you can unpause it. And then I'm going to work through this. If I'm going to change these, let me get a different color. I'm going to do 8 tenths, or I'll do 1/4 first, actually, I lied. If I have 1/4, I know that I need to make my denominator in 10 to 100. I can't do 10 because I can't make a 4 into a 10. I'm going to do 100, and I know that's times 25. So this one would be 25 hundredths. 8 tenths, I know looks like that. I'm going to make it, that's 8 tenths, or I can put 80 hundredths. If I have 5 hundredths, I know that is 5 hundredths. If I have 2 tenths, I know that that's 2 tenths. And if I have 45 hundredths, I'm going to do that. Okay, now I need to put these in order from greatest to least. So I have 25 hundredths. What else do I have? 5 hundredths. so I know that I actually converted all of them. Let me rewrite my number. 2/10. And that's, now I'm going to put these in order. I like to stack them so that I can look at place value and focus on that. I don't have anything in the 1th place, so far they're all the same. And if I'm going from greatest to least, now I'm going to move to the 10th place, and I'm looking for the number with the biggest number in the 10th place. Remember, because it says 8/10, that doesn't mean that it's small. 8/10 is actually the biggest one there, because I know 8/10 is really 80/100, and I know that 2/10 is really 20/100. So sometimes I think of it as money, so 80/100 would be the biggest. And then I know that, I'm going to cross it out so I remember. My next biggest would be, I have a 2/10, 0, 2/10, okay, a 45, so 45/100 would be my next. Oh, and then I have 2 that are 2/10, so I'm going to compare. I have 25/100 or 20/100. I'm going to do 25/100. And then I'm going to do 20/100. Or I guess that was 2/10. Oh, wait, no. Yes. And then 5/100. And then that would be in order from greatest to least. My suggestion, too, would be at the very end to put the original numbers in order as well. That way you can make sure that you have the correct answers. And you included all of them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I start hoping that this was helpful for you as a review. If you would like to continue to review a little bit more, there is a review, the end of the chapter review on Google Classroom that I would suggest doing as well. All right, bye guys.